Hello and good morning. I'm going to start streaming on my Twist review application. This is a application that I use and have been using for about a decade and have rebuilt quite a few times. This iteration of it is React and TypeScript that then reads from a GraphQL API, and the GraphQL API is served up through a combination of Hanami's controller gem. We can see that over in the gem file in the backend part of the application here, and it also uses a couple of ROM libraries as well. So rom-SQL, ROM repository, it talks to a Postgres database, and then has a couple of dry gems. Dry transaction isn't really used that much anymore. In fact, I think it's even deprecated, but we're still using it in this application. Dry auto inject and dry system are two other dry gems that we're using. I should mention the dry transaction gem is just replaced by a different one called dry monads. It's not like it's unmaintained anymore. It's just a evolution has happened and it's been replaced by something else. Today's stream, I'm actually going to set a timer here for 1 hour and 30 minutes. What we're going to be doing here is something that has been bothering me for quite a long time. That particular thing is that when I need to add a new user to this application, what I need to do is do it like it's the year 2000, SSH into production, actually connect to the Postgres database, and then insert into a particular table that a user has permission to access a book. What this all means is that this particular user ID, so user ID 14, has access to book 3. It's just a kind of way of inviting users to an application to Twist and letting them see some books here. What I want to do today is to add an invitations feature so that when I am on a book, I can say invite a new user, maybe add a new link up here somewhere, up the top here. Say invite a new user. Once a user's been signed up, then we can have a little drop-down box that then lets us select that user, and then they get added to the book, and I don't have to SSH into production and add a user that way. All this work is going to require a bunch of stuff. So it's going to require writing a new React front end, which is an invitation form. We'll use a little library called React Select to do the searching. We'll need a GraphQL API to search through the users in our database. Then we'll need another mutation to actually add the users, connect the user and the book together through that table, that permissions table, so that users can see that book. Hopefully we can get through all of that in an hour and a half, or at least let's see how far we can get in an hour and a half. I don't think it should take too long, but I should give you a good idea of how I will work, how it works in this Twist application, particularly with a combination of React and Ruby that you may not see in across a lot of applications. Traditionally, Rails applications are built with HTML, CSS, HTML, and ERB, and you might see a smattering of JavaScript there. But in this application, what we have is a clear separation between the front end and the back end. So if I bring up that sidebar again here, you'll see there is a backend directory here. In fact, I'll just go ahead and collapse everything. There are three main directories here. There's backend, front end, and GraphQL. Backend is where all the Ruby code is. Front end is where all the JavaScript and TypeScript code is. And GraphQL is the dumping ground for the schema from the backend service. This GraphQL schema is then used to infer some types in the front end, which we will see throughout this stuff, but it infers this massive automatically generated file, which allows me to type check all of the types in the front end code and make sure they match up with the GraphQL type. Anyway, that's a lot of information to start off with, isn't it? Hopefully we'll take it a little bit easier today through this, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so what we want to do here is to add in that feature. What I'll do now is I'll start a timer and we'll see how far we get in 1.5 hours. You might hear the timer go off at the end of it. It should go off at about 12:30. Perfect, right around lunchtime, so that would be great. Okay, first things first. This route here is books Rails book, and we should probably be accessing localhost to ensure that we see our changes, except it's currently not running. So let's figure that out first. The way we start the server is with yarn start. This will build the styles using Tailwind. The stars are built in Tailwind. this silly little pre-flight check thing. What is it? Skip pre-flight check. I've got to fix that as well. It's coming. That's coming up because Storybook has bumped the Babel loader version, and React scripts is not happy with that. But that should start at least the front end now. That'll load the front end. Once we've loaded the front end, we need to make sure the back end is running, which we can do with form and start. You may know that from other little libraries here. And that looks like there is something already running on port 5000, and I can use my little stop command. If you're interested in that, it is not that. I'm not sure where that is actually. It might be in Ryan aliases. Stop. It looks for anything running on that particular port and then kills the process. I can share that with you later on. In fact, it's on my .files GitHub repo if you'd like to see it there. Let's try that again. Go into backend, make sure that's stopped, and start it again. I think I just closed that tab before, and that's why it's breaking at the moment. Okay. Make that window a little bit taller for me. Looks like the server's up and running now. Okay. There's now an issue with the front end here. This is because I started doing this component earlier, but I haven't really gotten anywhere with it. So let's just build this, start again here. I started building this component and I thought, you know, this would be really good to live stream it. So I'm going to try and do it. So what we'll do here is just, we'll import from React, import React from React. And then we'll define a constant called invite. And what this just does is return a invite thing goes here. This error is happening because we aren't actually exporting anything from this module. So we need to export something there. And now this should be okay. Sometimes the front end needs to be reloaded because I don't know exactly why. It gets upset when you delete files and sometimes remove things and that sort of thing. Fortunately, it's really quick to start up. So there it goes. It should be good. Just want to make sure that this is actually running and correct. Okay, we're on localhost. So we saw active Rails before. The localhost has an example book called Markdown Book Test. When we click through to that, we go to the route called books and then a permalink looking thing. The way we can find that route is if we go into app.tsx, which is in the front end source directory. You can see it at the top here. And the route that we're looking for is this book permalink. This is coming through, the way this router is built, I should mention as well, is through the reach router library, which we can see imported here at the top. And this allows us to specify a component and then a particular path that matches on that component. So we have books and then book permalink, and that's where this book component is going to be rendered. Important to also note that they can be rendered at a different path as well. You can render it at a particular Git reference as well. So you could say, like, what did this book look like at this particular branch or this particular commit? Any sort of hashish reference you've got there. But the book component, okay, book is where we want to go. Okay, we've got this book thing. We have this Git information at the top. It has been a few months since I last looked at this code, but let's have a look. So we've got this Git information, then we've got notes for this book, and we've got this branches thing. Where do we want to add this link? Well, I think we kind of want it, let's just put it after this one here. So this will show us a third link. That's not quite right. We need another space there. So that, you can see that automatically refresh before I hit that button. So the link we want to take it to is probably like an invite link. I don't know why these all have a margin bottom of 4 specified on. It's not necessary at all. In fact, really what we should be doing is putting them in a div with a class name of MB4. So these are using the Tailwind utility classes there. And now that's still all going to be looking just fine as is. The thing we want to link it to is invite a user. And we can click this link and now it's not going to take us anywhere because that route hasn't been connected up to anything yet. The place where we want to connect it to is that invite component that we saw a little while ago. So books permalink invite here. We've got this invite component. Now it's going to cry because it's not there anymore. But instead what we want to do is have this invite component is now imported here. That was done automatically because I did the command dot shortcut in VS Code, which allows us to say automatically add these imports. So let me remove that again. I'll show it again in slow-mo. Command dot brings up this thing, import default invite from module book invitations invite, hit enter on that line, and it now imports, adds an import line. Not quite where I want it, so I'm going to move it. You know what? Let's try and have these in some semblance of alphabetical order because it's easier to find imports that way. All right. Now the front is failing because it doesn't have this type path. Path string is not assignable to type intrinsic attributes. This is due to an incompatibility with reach router. Reach router specifies a property called path, but our invite component does not specify that property at the moment. The way that we work around that in this application is to have an invite props class defined, which has a, that's right, thanks autocomplete, that was really good, route component props, and then we define our list of properties that we have for this component after that. Now, in order to use that type, we use React FC, which is short for function component. FC is just a much easier way of typing all those gnarly characters. And we say that this function component has a type argument of invite props. So this is a function component which matches, which has the props of this stuff. And now you'll see that these props have this path in it. This path, default location, navigate, and URI all come from reach router, which is this routing library that I'm using here. We're not using path at the moment. We're not actually supplying anything here so far. So what we'll do is we will now look, refresh that page, and it should be there. So now we have that invite goes here component displaying. What I want that to look like is sort of like that book index page to start off with. So that is this page. And what I'm looking for here is sort of this content. But we have that box, so let me show you what I mean. This set of box on the left-hand side, which is where the kind of shape that we'll have. Probably should move that out into a different component to given, you know, I kind of repeat this a bunch of times throughout the application, but right now, let's write this thing and then maybe we'll get some time to refactor it a little bit later on. So we're going to return this div. You might have seen that I just didn't have the brackets there, hit save, and Prettier did its thing, which is that it made that use those circle brackets, which is great. Then inside this thing we want to say invite a user, and there we go, we have an invite user. So we probably want this to say, where are we inviting a user to? Well, the way that we do this on other application pages is that we have sort of like this title of the book here, and then we have an introduction. We should probably do the same sort of thing for this, where we say like markdown book, maybe like I'll show you what I mean here. So do a H2 and then let me know like the H1 markdown book test. So we have it like this, where it's like we know which book we're inviting a user to, and the thing that we're doing on that book is where we're inviting a user. Now, not every book in this application is called markdown book test. So we kind of want like a dynamic way of pulling that in, and we need to have like a way of getting the book's title from the permalink. Now remember, the permalink may not match the book's title because the book's title might change, but the permalink is designed to be permanent, hence permalink. Now the way to get that information out of our API is probably by making a GraphQL call. What I've been doing in this application is defining these wrapped components. Now these wrapped components are kind of like a way of saying this is a, once we get the data, then we can actually render it. So really, like when we render this invite component, we should be able to do something like invite data or book title markdown book test, right? Something along those lines. And the component, this invite component has no clue at all that the information it's getting comes from GraphQL. All that logic of making the request to GraphQL and then fetching the logic out and getting the data into the component lives in this wrapped invite component. So let's go ahead and build that now. So this wrapped invite component, what we'll do here is that this thing also receives like this sort of wrap components. So that now receives that, and the thing that we're going to be exporting is not this invite thing, but it'll be this wrapped invite. And to make it just correspond to the same API at the moment, it's really this sort of thing. I didn't specify the props here. sc wrapped invite props, and this needs to be props here too. This is now no longer defined. I feel like we're going to have some props come through soon for this invite component, because we're going to have at least like a book title come through. So we'll see. Now, what we need to do in this thing is we need to load some data from GraphQL. So the way that we do that is with this thing called, with these functions which are provided to us through the Codegen stuff. So I mentioned before in GraphQL types, there's all these like types defined here that have come from Codegen, which is this configuration over here. This loads from the GraphQL schema. That's strange that it's not loading that. Schema.json, here we go. This is the schema dump. I kind of have to like go back a couple of steps here. So backend, we have a task here called rake GraphQL schema dump, and because my computer is having a moment, rake GraphQL schema dump takes the schema from the GraphQL API and dumps it into these two files, schema.graphql and schema.json. Schema.json is then like the JSON representation of the schema, which is great. In order to have the front end know what that Codegen, those types are, we use the Codegen library for that. Codegen then generates this types file for us. And all of these types in this file match up to the types that come from GraphQL. So we have these element with note fragments. We have note fragments. We have a type called book somewhere in this file. Somewhere. I promise you it's here. There it is. Which matches up exactly to the shape of the object coming from the GraphQL API. The other thing that's really handy with this is that it has these this plugin called TypeScript React Apollo. This thing adds in a series of functions. So if I want to use a book query, I can do this, use book query. And this will this uses some queries from my application. Somewhere in my application I've got a file called book query, and it's going to get me all of this information out of it. Probably don't need all of that. There's probably a shorter query somewhere I could use. Not quite sure. I think there's notes header, which kind of does a shorter query than that. It does. This is query wrapper here, which gets a notebook query. It's sort of like what I want. I kind of probably want a separate query to this, like use. I don't know quite the shape that I want. I kind of just want the book's title out of this. Like, book query here is getting quite a lot of information, and really we just want that title. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. Really, so I'm trying to find a query here just to kind of get an idea of what we're doing. GQL is a helper provided by the GraphQL library, but it also comes from Apollo. Really what I want to do is like just get me the book's title. So get me a book based on its permalink, and its permalink permalink is a string type here. I think. I feel like I'm doing something wrong here. It's this is what I want. Pretty much this start of this query. Like this. And then from that book's title, I just want like that, right? And I want an invite, so book title, invite book query is that kind of shape. That is sort of the shape that I want. So in our application, in Twist application, what I've been doing is creating these files like queries, and then defining them in a separate file, just so they're not tied up with the React logic, kind of keeping the two things separate. You can define them just as GQL like this, and what will happen then is that it will be able to pick that up when I run Codegen in a second, just tidying this up here. Okay, let's go over to the front end now, and we're going to do yarn GQL Codegen. So the query that I've built here is called book title, and now in here what I should have is a I should be able to use book title. use book. Huh. I feel like something's gone squiffy. Book query doesn't export of that. I don't think I need to export the default of that. Surely not. Not sure what's going on there. So book query does this from GraphQL tag. I mean, that's really the only difference, right? Book title, query book title. Use book notes, use books query, use book query. Very interesting that it's not working. Okay. It's a pain in the bum. Let's have a look. So we got notes book query here. This is then exporting the default of that, which is exactly what we're doing over in queries. The difference is that this thing, the other one's called TSX. So let's have a look at Codegen-config. That is, yeah, okay, that's set up to read TSX. That was the difference here. So, Codegen-config. Is there a way to read TS and TSX? Documents, source, GraphQL, documents, output file level, here. So it looks like we can do TS or TS like this. And we can specify either or. We probably could use a question mark there too at a guess, but let's have a look at what that does. So yarn GQL Codegen, that is much better. So can a query field title? This is a great error. What I'm doing in this query is actually I'm using the API wrong. That's not the right query. The query is this file. So this book thing doesn't actually return a book itself. It returns two types. It can either return a permission denied or it can return a book itself. So the way we can work around that is we say on permission denied that, or on a book return that. So what this is saying is like you cannot return, you cannot query the field title on book permission check result. The book permission check result is either a permission denied error, like you don't have access to see that book, so you can't do anything, or it's a book. You do have permission, therefore you can see it. All good. Let's try running that again. I don't know why my other query file is called TSX, by the way. Like, that could just be a TS file. I guess it's just an old habit I was in before, but it's okay now. All right, let's try again. Use book title. Still not going. All right. Types. Use book title. There it is. Use book title query. That's the one I'm after. I'm not sure why this is not working, but that's okay. Let's do it. Data, loading, error are the three keys returned by this thing. Use book title query. I know that works. I know you can import it. There, now it's picked up that it's actually available. Use book query title takes an argument, which is the book permalink. Now the book permalink comes from this route component props. Route component props are kind of the information that comes from reach router by default, but the extra thing we have here is actually book permalink. The book permalink is going to be this book permalink prop that's passed here. So we'll do book permalink and book permalink here. That is not happy because that should be a circle bracket. This is not happy because book permalink is defined as being undefined, but it can be a string as well. And this should be variables. That's the thing I'm always forgetting here. Okay, book permalink still unhappy. It's not book permalink, it's just permalink. That is the argument to our query. If we look over here in query, the argument's called book is just permalink, not getref. We can actually remove getref from that query too. We're not actually using getref anywhere. We generate that. It was kind of prompting us for that issue there. So now we've got the book title. We can now fetch that information out. what we want is if the person doesn't have access to view the book, in fact, this is quite good. If we see in this query that the data returned from this query is something where it says permission denied, then we don't actually render this form. So that's quite a good thing we're using this GraphQL query for. So let's see what that looks like. So query wrapper is the generic component that I have for wrapping loading and error states. We can do this, and this. We then have a query wrapper. The thing we want to return inside that is just an invite for now. And in fact, I'm going to separate that out because we have a couple of things. Render invite, in fact, do it like this. And this takes a data object. So what we'll do is render invite data, and we'll do data and import query wrapper using that command dot again. Okay. This is unhappy because render invite's not actually returning anything. So this needs to actually return an invite. Well, it needs to return an invite, but the shape of the data, I'm not sure what this is. This is actually not returning anything either. Okay. There needs to be another return there. So now that's happy. This is the last thing that's unhappy. The data object here is erroring out because data is declared as a, well, number one is declared, but its value is never read. Calm down. We'll get to that in a second. The other thing is that the data has an implicit any type. Any is something we really should be avoiding in TypeScript. Any's like, I give up. I don't know what this type is. And if you're reaching for any, you may as well just be writing regular JavaScript, because it's like it doesn't provide you any type safety at all. It's like without any sort of guardrails, and really we should be trying to avoid that as much as possible. The data that we get back from this thing is either really it's like that, right? It's render invite or permission denied. So the data that we get back from this, thankfully we can have, let me see in that types file again. Let's close a couple of this other stuff down first too. So use book title query returns book title query result. The data shape here is book, it's not book permission check result. It's like book title data. I feel like it's that. No, not quite. Book title query, perhaps. Yeah, there. Book title query. So this is using book title query, which is a function that will use that query. And the data that we get back is going to be in this shape. So, oh, there you go. It's actually showing us quite nicely. The book title query, the data that we get back from the query result here is either a book or it's a permission denied error. And we can check that based on the type of that data. So data type name. If this is permission denied, you know what? What we're gonna do here is what are you upset about here? Condition return false. It's query data book. That's right. If the data book, the thing that's being returned here, the top level object has a query on it. This is the query result, and then the key inside of that is book, and book can either be a book or a permission denied error. So if the book type name is permission denied, and this is again one of those memes that's repeated throughout this code base, really we should do something about it, but permission denied is something we can render. And this is a little component which I will import as well, and we can command and click on that, and that will take us to this. Really what it says is that you do not have permission to see that book. So instead of rendering that invite component, it's not actually going to render that at all. Now that we've checked this type name, the great thing here is that we know that the book title that we're going to get through here, this book object, is even though it's saying that it could either be book or permission denied, because we've kind of already checked for permission denied here. TypeScript's smart enough to know that this is actually going to be a that book here is actually just going to be that book with a title on it. It knows already because we've already said, well, one of the arms of this thing. What we said is that the book object here, if it's a permission denied type, then render permission denied. And it can only, TypeScript knows that it can only reach this part if it is a book itself, right? So that's why we can access data book title. What you'll see up a little bit earlier on, if we try to access data book title here, it will actually you know, if we do return data book title, it will say, hang on, no. Property title doesn't exist on permission denied. Now, that's because we haven't checked to see what type it is yet. But if we try and do it here, render data book title, it's fine because it knows that book is already a proper book object. Now, invite doesn't take a book property. That is the type of prop, the prop that we need to specify here. So we'll actually do that here now, and we have book title, and we have a book title here. Ta-da! We have a book title. We'll start using this query wrapper stuff a little bit later on. Now, this is saying book permalink is not used. What did I do wrong here? That's interesting. Book permalink is missing in type. Oh, because I think wrap component props needs to wrap. Wrapped invite props. Yeah, it's actually 2 type arguments like that. Like that. So that's saying that the React functional component has a type argument of wrap component props, and wrap component props itself takes a type argument of wrapped invite props. All of that will return a type that has path default location navigate in URI, as well as a type that has book permalink on it. And there we have it. We have our markdown book test title appearing there. Now, I kind of need to show you and prove, I guess, that actually works. And the way I need to do that is like insert the user into the other book, which I think is that one. So there's ASCII.book test, and we are inviting a user into that book. The good thing here is that it's kind of already knows that we have that data already, and so it's not doing a loading. Apollo knows that we have that data, the title already, so it won't load that time a second time, I don't think. Let me see the network tab here. Refresh this page, invite a user. See, it didn't do a second request there. I refresh this page, there's one request, okay. If I go back here, ASCII.book test, and I go clear, nope, try again. That button, okay. Invite a user. See, there's not another request. This is because Apollo has noticed that we've already loaded that data. So this is the GraphQL library that I'm using in React. Apollo's noticed that we've already loaded that book's information based on its permalink, and it then knows that we already have the title. But at least we're now rendering the title. So we go markdown book test and invite a user. Excellent. Okay. Now I have a way of showing a book's title. So that is kind of the structure of a default component in Twist, is that we have this kind of real not so clever component that's a book title, and then it shows an invite a user thing. It doesn't know where book title comes from, doesn't know where any of the other data comes from. It just kind of relies on its own stuff. And then wrapped invite is where all that logic is of like, if we needed to load any data beforehand, here it is. Okay, the thing we want to do is invite a user. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to use a component called React Select. React Select doesn't exist in this application yet, so we will need to import it. React Select. React Select is quite beautiful. Really like using it. Very, very handy for this sort of thing. React Select is going to provide that drop down once npm decides it wants to give me some packages. And I think I need to import those types as the types for it too. Generally beyond add. I'll wait. I might just wait for fs event just to finish there. Okay. Now add the types React Select. I think it has those types. All right. React Select is going to render a component. Oh, come on. You know React Select's there. I'll do it myself. React Select from React Select. Ta-da. Now you're happy. Kind of fine. Type definition. Yeah, that was the error I was trying to prevent with that import. I guess I can close this tab down. Okay, got some types. Let's see, setters. Just fixated. Okay, that should start it up again. Any moment now. There we go. Alright, here is the React select component. So what we're trying to do here is to have this automatically populate based on things you type in. So like you could type in a user here and it should automatically populate. Let's just check out what users we have in that database actually. I don't think there are any select users. Very advanced SQL query going on here. Oh look, it's just me. So we have two kind of things here. We have the GitHub login and we have the name. Now, should we allow searching based on name? Probably just GitHub login is fine for now. So we'll do that. The thing that we want here is not a React select component. The thing that we want is actually a React select async component. An async component in React select will query an API, and that API is going to be the user's API that we're going to add. So this is the callback information here, and we can type in like purple. It will simulate a request and do the right thing here. So the thing we want to actually do is this async. Async select, I think, and let's have a look at what the code recommends to do. The code recommends doing an async select here. They've imported, I don't know what make async selector is doing. They don't appear to be using that at all, so let's get rid of that. They do an async select with a load options function. Load options is then loading it from this stuff, so we'll do that. So do async select load options. Load options is load options and cache options. That looks handy. You know, if you type the same thing, it should be good. There are no default options, and what's this doing? It's doing a handle input change. Should I care? Not right now. Probably not. Probably just that load options is something that we care about. Now, invite here knows how to load options isn't really defined here. We could define it anywhere inside this component. Just cautious because it kind of really ties this component to the GraphQL API. Oh, I'll show you what I mean. Okay. They have a load options function, and that is returning. Looks like it takes two arguments. It takes an input value. Input value and some sort of callback. Don't know why I would use that. Callback. Oh, okay. Callback is what you call when it actually returns. So callback. All right. What we kind of want to do here is something like users query, and then the variables are the GitHub login with the input value, which we can call login instead of input value because it's just so vague. It's gonna pause this. I need to go to the bathroom. BRB. back. Right, let's see what this is doing. So what we need to do is do something like use users query here, which will hit an API to load the users based on the GitHub login. We don't have that API yet in the backend. So this is kind of the point where we would want to do that sort of thing. Just to give you an example of what kind of data this should return. The callback function we want to return here is an array of things that are in that right shape, which I believe is not value, not option, value, radar, label, radar, value, twist, label, twist. This is still going to have an argument because it's not the right shape. Next, select load options, TypeScript. Yeah. I want to kind of type that though. Be like, load option should be of a particular shape. Like that's gotten. Okay. Yeah, that knows its shape, but that's unhappy. Okay. What I'll do then is do this and this, just to walk around those issues that it's erroring out on. Okay, so if you type something here, it comes up with a couple of names. You click on a name and then you can invite that user. That is really the essence of this whole thing, and that is not letting me change it now. Okay, fine. Type it again. That's fine. So really what we want is some sort of shape like this eventually to kind of come out of our GraphQL API. So let's switch over to that and that end of our application. First things first, we want to actually write a test for this. I've been writing a bunch of tests over in GraphQL, and here we have some more different requests. Probably want to do it like here in the queries file. So users spec RB. You know what? In interest of time, I'm going to steal some of this. That's a lot. That's not so much. Okay. So really, this has a shape of a query. All right. Users. Don't mind about any of this stuff. So what we need to do is to stub out the user repo here. The user repo is just going to be a dummy thing. These tests don't try and hit any database to... These tests are designed to never hit a proper database. What they do is they instead mock out the user repository. So the thing that we want to return is a user object, and we may actually want to return a bunch of them. So what we'll do is like user1, GitHub, login, radar, and I think there was a name field there too. Yeah, name's good. We also have the email address, but really showing email addresses to random users probably not a great idea at this point in time, given all the privacy leaks. So user2, GitHub login, we'd say twist. I'm going to say twist books. That's fine. And the query, this is going to be the interesting point. The query that we want to do is the users query. And the thing that we're looking up is a GitHub login. That's going to be a string. And then we're going to do a users query here. And that's going to be a GitHub login of that same shape, GitHub login. And things we want to return are... do we want permissions denied on that? Probably at some point later on. I will leave myself a note for that in a second. Let's write that down actually. Okay. Two things we want to return here are the GitHub login and the name of the users. That's the information we want out of here. The repos that we're using in this test are the user repo, and that is the user repo like this. In order to do a query, our tests, oh god, that's so long. Our tests do this. So what we're saying is expecting the user repo to receive by GitHub login and return a series of users, so user1 and user2, like that. And that's really what we want to do. So we say like when we run that query, which is like this sort of thing, it's just like me constantly cribbing from past Ryan, he was very smart. Me live streaming Ryan, very not smart. Okay, So it fetches the users matching the login. So really, if we're like doing just one search, it should only return one user. Is there a test, I wonder? Are we doing a test that's like, yes, yeah, this one tests kind of like making sure everything is working correctly. This one looks to be doing a proper, yeah, that's using proper transactions. So we'll come back to that one too in a second. I'm really pushing the boundaries of time here, aren't I? Received by GitHub login with radar, I think, something like that, and returning user 1. So fetches user matching the login. The query we want to run is this. The GitHub login is this with radar, and then the context is the current user. So this is determining if the user is logged in or not. That's coming from the application. The users that get returned from this, there are a bunch of users, and there should be expect users count to equal 1. Expect users first. GitHub login to equal radar. Making sure those fields are actually available, and name is rom-rb. And there we go. That should be good. Let's try that out here. Go over into the backend, run the test. Oops, copied too much of that path. It is not happy with something I've done up here. I'm missing a comma right there. And I'm missing another comma. Oh. Let's have a different ID for that user and comma there too. What's pointing me to that is like this is saying name, pointing to name, so I'm looking at name, and anything above that line's like going up from that line, and this was the line that was missing a comma. In case you're wondering how I found that very quickly. Database doesn't exist. Shows you how long it's been since I worked on this application. Since the last time I accidentally blew the database away. App end test. Rake db migrate. Ugh, Rake. Get it together, Rake. What are you doing? Okay, rerun the test, and it's now failing. So the query is actually not succeeding, and the way I can find that out is by adding the pry here. Really, I should have something that's like, hey, idiot, the query is failing. You know, you shouldn't really do that. You shouldn't really like be able to check stuff out here. But this is what we're seeing. So we're seeing field users doesn't exist on type query. This is our GraphQL query type, which is defined over here. It literally doesn't have a field called users yet. So we'll add one. The thing we want to return is a bunch of user types. No, it cannot be null. And the argument that it gets is GitHub login, which is a string type argument, and it is indeed required. Okay, the thing then we want to do is return a bunch of users based off the GitHub login. Context is a user repository, and by GitHub login, that's the kind of stuff we want to do. And when we make that query, it should be okay now. Make sure we've got it. Result is nullability mismatch on variable GitHub login in argument GitHub login string and string. Fascinating. I guess because in the query I'm not specifying it's required. Yep, there we go. So what was missing there is that in the query I was saying the string could be missing, but it's not actually missing here. Okay, we're now returning a bunch of users. This is saying the user is attempting to access an attribute called GitHub login, which is not available on the user object. So we go over here. Strange that it's not available. Okay, well, Rails C. Old habits, hey? They die hard. Bin console's probably what we want, and we want to find all the users in that user repo. What arguments do I have? First, by PK. Okay, so I have this repositories user repo. Trying to remember how I do this. This repositories user repo new. User repo first. Oh yeah. By pk1. Okay. Get back a bunch of users. Now this is getting GitHub login, so really it should be returning the right shape. Like, should look at that error again perhaps. So what I was checking for there is that the twist user struct here definitely has a GitHub login field. Now this is saying that, oh, the user type on the GraphQL thing. Yeah, okay. It was being, yeah, this thing has a GitHub login. Okay, but it wasn't a hash. The thing got back, very fascinating. What did it get back then? I wonder. Def GitHub login binding apply. Just to try and access the value, and this should pause the test right at the object, so we should now have access to the object. The object is empty. The object doesn't have any attributes at the moment, which is strange. Am I not doing anything to retrieve users? What about chapters? What about books? Aha! I specify attributes in books. That's probably what's missing from user. So user is like, well, you didn't tell me what attributes you can return, so stuff ya. We'll get some attributes here. Oh no, this isn't something you'd have to do in Rails. Can't wait until DHH watches this video. GitHub login, and we'll do a name, and then users will definitely have, hopefully. Let's see what objects we have. Yeah, okay. It was because, okay, this issue was happening because I said that the user struct didn't have any attributes. So when ROM loads the struct from the database, it says, okay, the class, does it define any attributes and match the database? If it doesn't populate those. So this way I can have the struct only have certain attributes on it. Like if I had a password on this user, you notice that password is not even being available here. It's not useful at the moment, right? To have a password displayed for the user. So I only want the GitHub login and the name returned in this query. Very, very handy, I would like to think. Okay, user information is being returned here. GitHub login is blank because of the binding.pry that I left over yonder. In here, GitHub login, that can go away now. All right. This should be much, much better now. Okay, we have our test passing with the mock. So that's user spec. That's this one. This is all using mock stuff, and you can see the test like runs super quick. It has to load the environment first, but then it runs and it's all up and working. If you get rid of the binding.pry, of course, it'll run a lot faster. Here, there you go, 0.5 seconds in the end. Like that's all just with mock stuff. Just to make sure that it's working here too, I'm just cautious because this has to kind of filter by something on the database, and we really haven't set that up yet. So the thing that we want to do here is to create a user, which is this code here. And then we want to kind of have a way of creating that. So what we try and do here is like this sort of stuff. I'll just pilfer a bunch of code here. Describe users. So we're going to create a user and create, in fact, 2 users. In fact, we'll even add a GitHub login of radar. I hope create user takes that. And I need to define what create user is. It's this transaction in this application. Let's have a look at what create user does. Users create. It's called persist, and does take a GitHub login there in the input. Saves it. Great. So we do not have to go too far off track here. User 2. So email and password are there, but they aren't going to be returned by this API, which is really good. Rails will just give you everything. But this will not do that. Okay, users are being returned, so we have the correct users there. Now, the thing we want to do here is a query, which is this kind of shape of stuff here. This is the query, and then we have variables, and then we do query. This is good. Okay, so do let query, and it's going to be that same shape. Oh, one other thing to mention about this is that we can do what am I trying to say? We can do. So this is the great thing about live coding. You just kind of stutter and get lost in your own. Get lost along the way. The great thing about this is that we can steal that query from the. If we had it in the front end, we could steal it from there. We don't, but we can steal it from the other test, which is this one. Ta-da! I'm using different syntax here. It's all right. Doesn't really matter too much. Either way, I'll get the job done. My kingdom for prettier in Ruby, but that's okay. It's a different subject. Okay. The thing we want to run here is this method called query with some variables, and then the user. So the user, we might run that as just user one. So it's like I can query for any user here. Book spec is then going to return the JSON body. Okay. I might just do it by pry there and say it finds all users who are not the current user. Okay. You know, just do a bit of that sort of action. GitHub login is twist. You know what? Finds all users. Why not? Matching login. Okay. So this should find the other user. The query we want to run is just straight up query. The variables are variable and the user is that. That's good. Then we'll do a sort of find all users matching the login. Running a pry here. That's then going to output some, hopefully output some JSON. So I will do a bit of this magic action. That's Command T. This is FZF, which will load us a bunch of files, and then we can run the query. Oh no. Oh, I'm not requiring something at the top here, aren't I? Need to load request helper. Relation contains more than one tuple. Cool. Because there are two users matching the same email address, so this should be like twist@ryanbig.com. All right. What are we doing? Perfect. So that first query thing, because we're mocking user repo here, really we should probably be doing an instance double. And I'll show you why. Great reason why we should use an instance double. This will say, oh no, it doesn't implement that method. Hey, FYI, when you run this code in production, it's going to break because that method doesn't exist. So let's go over the user repo and we'll add that method in, and then this should be good. So in this application, I'm kind of trying to use find where I mean one and by where I mean multiple, except this by PK to match by PK. Anyway, I'm trying to use by to say like by GitHub login. Really, this should only match a single user, but it needs to be kind of like it should be able to type like part of a user's name, especially if they got a really long name. So GitHub login here, and we'll say users by GitHub login. Wow, right? Wow, Ryan, how is this going to work? I'll show you in a moment. So this logic, good thing about ROM is that I can put like really simple Ruby code here, and that will make that Ruby file, that Ruby test pass, and leaves your repository really nice and clean. But ROM also separates it out into kind of a couple of different classes. There's the struct that we saw before, there's this repository class that we're in now, and then there's another thing called relation. And relations are where you do your ugly, it's where you leave your bodies. So you've got your notes, which one? Here we go. So here's some really gnarly query that I've got. Doesn't live in my notes repository. It lives over here in this relations file instead, which means that the counts for elements call in the notes repo, which I believe is this one, ends up doing this. This is the query part, and then this is the Ruby code in order to structure the results of that query in a way that the database, the way the front end can understand it, or the GraphQL API can understand it. All right, now our other test, our request spec is failing because the relation for users does not have this method def by GitHub login. So let's create it, GitHub login. And what we want to do here is like a where, but with a wildcard. I'm actually not sure how to do that, so I'm going to consult the documents Ugh, that's not really helpful. rom-rb wildcard. SQL dataset. Not quite. SQL cheat sheet. Starts with, yeah, it's probably just like sort of like that. Ah, yeah, name like that. Where name like, and then I can do hopefully GitHub plugin. So I'm going to use the start of that, and then hopefully that will be okay. I think that's the right syntax. Let's have a look. Ooh, it ain't happy because I missed out a bracket. Okay, we'll try again. Yeah, okay. No, rom-SQL does not like that. Let me have a look. rom-rb. See, even I need to Google stuff sometimes. It's great. SQL relations. Queries. Protection DSL. Select. Not quite what I want. Where name. Sort of. Aha. Where name. That's what I was after. Name. I like. Yes. Even better to use an I like. That's a good idea. Okay. And then this should be GitHub. We'll do GitHub login. So that's a case insensitive like there. That's really good. All right. So where name I like is that. All right. We get back some data. What data did we get back? JSON body, not JSON data. Cool. We get back just this thing called twist. That's great. That's the kind of shape of data we are after. The user spec is this, so we go expect JSON. You know what we'll do is we'll do a dig. We'll go users is JSON body dig data users, and we have users, so expect the users count to equal 1. Expect users first GitHub, with quotes GitHub login to equal twist. In fact, you know, that's matching exactly to the search term. So let's make sure that I like is actually working there by doing something a little bit different there, and the name should be twist books, and I think we'll be golden now with that API. Oh no, need to change it here too. It's okay, we've still got some time. Still got about half an hour. All right. Okay, we've added that users API. Excuse me while I stretch. Sitting in a desk, great idea. For hours on end, huh? All right, so we've got this queries thing here. Twist web GraphQL queries. Make sure that we can actually execute the query against a dummy database, which is this one here. We've stubbed it out. We've stubbed out the repository, so there's actually no database call going on here, and we've used an instance double to ensure the repository actually responds to this method by stubbing out. The other thing we've done over here is made sure that when we create a bunch of users, run a real query against the application. This is like doing similar to what you might do like when you require Rails helper, boots up the application, executes a real query against it, and actually hits the database. We need to do this to ensure the query is actually running through correctly. I like to have both of these tests in place just to make sure that things are working correctly. Okay, we've built the query. The next step we need to do is to dump we've made some changes to the GraphQL API, so we actually need to jump this out now. By this silly rate thing, I will fix it before the next live stream. I will fix it, I promise. This dumps out the GraphQL schema definition out to these couple of files, and then the front end can read that and infer the correct types for us to use. So that is the user search stuff in backend all sorted. Let's jump back over to front end now. So front end invite. This is kind of where we want to do that query. We want to do it over here. Now we'll jump back over into, I'll just close a couple of these tabs. go back over into front end land. And what I want to do here is to generate some of those types again. And we should see a bunch of different in types.ts. We should see like users. I don't have a query for it yet, but there is a okay. Getting ahead of ourselves there. The queries that we want here, we've exported this one here called book title. The query that we want, thankfully we have one we prepared earlier over in the spec, which is this shape. Good thing about GraphQL queries is they are written in the same language everywhere. I don't know why we need to export these actually now. That was a silly thing to try and do before. Really, we're just trying to define these queries, and what this will do, Codegen will read these files and then load up those queries for us into types that we can use. Okay, that should be better now. So use users query. Good, we have something. This is an automatically generated function that is, here we go, and see a good example here. We can say data loading error, use users query, pass a variable, call GitHub login. Bob should be your uncle. Fun fact, Bob is indeed my uncle. Hi Uncle Bob, don't expect you to be watching this, but hello anyway. Okay, so the thing where we want to use that is here, use users query. And we want to pass a list of variables. The variables we want to pass is a GitHub login with the login like that. This is going to have a little think about where users use query comes from, but it's there. The const data loading error use users query, and it's unhappy. Why? I think because I'm using it inside of a hook function, which is yes, there's an error. It's called in a function that is neither a React function component nor a custom React hook function. React components' names must start with an uppercase letter. Yeah, okay. Well, that's certainly interesting. Because it's a hook function, we need to call it when a certain value changes and get some data out of that. Okay. Just here's why React Select was doing the fun thing. The fun thing. I should be more specific. Sorry, they were doing on async select over here. They were saying when the input value changes, do this thing. So now I can see why they're doing that. That's very good. All right. Handle input change is search. I kind of want to just set search term to be the. Yeah, okay. I'll use a string and say the search term is this. Now, why am I doing this? Well, the search term, the load options, this thing needs to run inside of a use effect. Use effect in React is only called when stuff gets changed. So use effect will only change when search term is updated, and search term now const search term in set search term. We'll use a use state for that, which is a string, and by default it's going to be a blank thing. Hopefully this stops having a moment about it. Why is this still upset? What? Oh, I guess because I'm loading it in. Okay. It's still unhappy. Probably want to do like load users, and then that takes a particular thing of a login, which is a string. Okay. Because I was calling it inside of a component, that this code will get evaluated multiple times. So okay. Is it still unhappy? Really? Okay. use load users is what it will need to do. So use load users, then it gets some data and returns some data out of it. So like that, I think. I don't know if that will make a difference if I put it here instead. Okay, it does. Great. Use load users. So this is the function that will then be used to find the stuff. I guess we don't need the handle input change anymore. Okay, which means we don't need this. Use load users. Okay, so we can probably then do use load users like this and return a promise of this. Really upset about that? Unknown. Undefined. I guess it'll be. Can I do a then on the end of that? I don't think so. Loading. Just trying to figure out how to do this. So use load users. I mean, I don't know why that even needs to be in a separate. Oh, because it's inside a. Yeah. Okay. We'll call this use load options, and then that will stop that from being angry at us. And then this is then not that, but because it needs to, the naming needs to match up because React Hooks has particular rules around what names you have for stuff. We only want to say if the data is around, then return the callback in this right shape of the data. So the data, the data kind of shape that we want returned from this thing is not the data. The data is this user queries object instead. It's, yeah. We currently want to do a map on that data and say like for every single user in that block of data. Can I do that? No, not happy? Okay. Like that? Yeah, happy? Cool. Yeah, okay, happy. And okay. For every user, we want to return a label, which is like the user's GitHub login, and then the value, which is the user's also the user's GitHub login. It's the same sort of thing. I think actually if they're the same, we probably could just do, I'm guessing, user GitHub login for React Select, and hopefully that should then return something. So let's have a look. Oh, it crashed. Did you see that? Bam. Type crash. Invalid hook call. Hooks can only be called inside the body of a function component. Okay, I might move that out of there because the function, this function, every time this gets called, it's going to rerun. It's going to like redefine this function, which is not going to work. So, oh my goodness, shows what I know, hey. Do not call hooks inside loops, conditions, or nested functions. Well, I think I did that. I might be breaking the rules. Sorry. Fascinating. Okay, we'll have a look. Well, I feel like I'm doing the right thing, but okay, might not be doing the right thing. All good. Yeah, it's just when I'm typing into that file. Selecting, fine. Typing, And then please ban. So this is saying use state, persist form, use effect, persist form. So it's like Okay. So if I type into that, then the options are going to change. Yeah, so this is using React effect on start. Okay, and then that's defining a function inside of that, so it's saying use effect. And then it's using state there. Yeah, okay. Oops, probably not what we're after. Not sure. Okay, we'll play around, have a little peek stuff. Invite a user. Still unhappy. I think it's just because I'm calling this function and it's happening because I guess that's the async. Okay. The input value is this. Like they're setting an input. Okay, let's go back to doing that again. Handle input change. I feel like that was the right thing. Value is a string, and we've got that saying set search term to be the value. Okay. I will then do search term, set search term, use state, a string, and set that as an empty thing. Now this function, move that back into here, and then that's on use effect. And that only needs to get run when search term changes. I think. Let's see. Okay, we'll have to have a look again. And I just closed the tab I needed. Let's open that back up. Failed to compile because that function is no longer available. Okay, we'll move that somewhere we can find it. That goes over there. Use effect with search terms. So this is defining a function called use load options. Okay, we will try and set the data like this. So if the search term changes, then we set the data up, and we'll say users set users, and maybe instead of like I want to have that as like an array of strings at the moment, and have that as an empty array to start off with. So use effect when search term changes. The thing that we want to get back out of that is set users to be this, and that. Although now we don't have the access to the login, which is the search term. And this is saying that. If data Still unhappy. Okay. Well, use users query, then we have that, and then we have search term, that's fine. If data, map, set users, okay. GitHub login can be blank, I think, on users, but I'm trying to say that. So strange. I just want this to work. Like, okay. Use users query variables. GitHub login. Try and do something simpler like this, and then the options are the users that get returned. So this should be a little bit easier to understand. The options are the data. Just for now, I'll set that to that and do. I just don't feel like that's the right thing to do at the moment. Like async select should be okay. Load options should then use this function, but it's like unhappy about for whatever reason. Use load users. Login string. Okay. Load users. So that takes that and took a callback as well, which is a function. And then if the data was present, what we would do then is call that with a map of the user. And then for each of those data users map, user GitHub login. The thing we want here is login. Like, still feeling like something is going to break again. So they say use friend status, use statuses like that, but how is this a violation? Not understanding something. Well, I don't have mismatched versions. I'm probably breaking the rules of hooks. So hooks can only be called inside the body of a function component. This could happen for more than one. Like, I understand this is not inside of a function component. Like, it needs to be there, but then it even errors out there too. Like, very weird stuff going on. Okay, so we do this. We do use context and throw invalid hook error. Load options. While React is rendering a function component. Do not call hooks in event handlers. Well, that's probably what I'm doing wrong. You might see this error. Fix it, move it outside. Okay, that's in a handle click. That's inside user memo, and that's inside of a class component. Okay. Well, I don't have... very strange. We will look again. Custom hooks, user effect, like... That's not right. I want an example using React Select. Oh, here we go. Second page of Google results. Handling input change, it's doing load options, that's not a hook. Like, this is the sort of feature we want, where it's like selected value and it should be okay. Ah, invalid hook call error. Okay. Code outside use effect. Oh, well, that's very helpful. Thank you, random Stack Overflow user. Okay, suggesting to put it at the top level, but what top level do you mean? This user looks to be running into a similar effect to what we're doing. Just like this is all inside that. I would hook call React Select. Okay. I mean, one thing to do is just to have a like, when you update that input, then it finds the right thing, but that would be like setting it manually, which just seems just a bit silly to do. All right, to change it to like a React Select. Yeah, let's try it. I'm just bothered by this. He's spinning the wheels so long on this damn thing. So options is a list of options, right? And then what you do is handle input change, and you say the value is, which is a string, and you say set search term to be the value. That then, yeah, I'm getting to that, calm down. Const search term, set search term use state is a string. That. Alright, so search term set. Then we want to call like this function, but only when I use effect. I think this is I'm at wit's end here. And only call that when search term changes. Okay. And like now this is failing because it's not at the top level. Like using it inside a condition. Okay. So strange. Options, set options. Use state is an array of strings, which is an empty array to start off with. If there's any data, we set options to be this shape. This is search time. Const find users login. You know what? It's probably that little bit here. This needs to be like at the top level. Like that is probably what it's complaining about. Like, no. Use find users. Okay. And then this is like use. So what you do is like return that, then use find users const data loading error, that like that. Probably what it wants. Use find users. What? I'm not passing it the argument. I see. Search term. Yeah, happy. It cannot be called inside a callback. Oh my god. Do I really need to like do all that? This is saying extract it to like its own hook. So like have this have a state of like use state const users set users array of set. Oh man. String. Okay, cool. And then this is like const data loading error. Then this one is if data do that, set uses that. Yeah. GitHub login with a bang. Ah, there's a timer. We're almost done. Okay, so we get users, and then it says like return users. See, this is what this is like doing. It's like build up state, use effect of that, like have something that changes, and then do that query there. So it's like use effect of when this changes. Where does it end? There. When effective login changes, do that. Okay. Oh my god, I'm just nesting it further and further, aren't I? Alright, that seems happy. Happier. So when search term changes, then it's going to return this stuff. So the options it's going to return is this. So you use, yeah, okay, that looks better, right? So this is then its own little hook. Search term, when it changes, is going to have to recall this function, and then options is going to change it. Oh my gosh, okay. That actually doesn't find it. Login. Alright, and change this back to async select, and we'll do load options with load. Okay, I see. And then this can be used, find users, and that doesn't need to be that. Async select can be async select here. Async select from React select async. Async S, Y, and C select. Load options use find users. So this doesn't need to be set. And the thing that we're doing is to, yeah, okay. Use find users takes a callback. Oh no, you know what? No, no, no. That's how we ran into trouble before. Const load options is callback is a function. This is the users, and then the callback takes users. And you'd be like, don't call use find users here because it's not a callback. Use load options. Use load options. That is just ridiculous. Like having to call a function a particular name. Like, come on, really, people? All right, this should be calling use find users now. This has an array of that stuff. Console login. Strange it's not loading it. Like, that's changing it. I think there'd be like a network request going on there. Oh. No, nothing. Use load options. Okay. No, binding to probably won't work there. Login. Let's try this. Let's give it I don't know, 15 more minutes or so. I think we're getting there better. Well, we'll wrap it up in, yeah, you know what? Hey Siri, set a timer for 15 minutes. I'm gonna go have some lunch. I reckon. Getting a bit hungry. Alright, so input value here, which really doesn't, like, it sets the input value, replaces it with something. I feel like they're just doing it for that reason. So strange, this thing is not actually... Oh, I'm not doing async here. Alright. Let's try again. Come on, up you get. Compiling, what do you need to compile? Stop. Computers, hey? Oh, oh man, really? Maybe like that again? Invalid hook call can only be called inside the body of a function component. All right. That's a bit much. Okay, so it looks like it's at least getting to one of the console logs there. Probably not. Not sure which one. Alright, I think what we'll do is we'll leave it there. I'll go and have some lunch and I'll come back later and try and fix this. I would recommend to anyone who gets stuck on programming problems like this, when you get stuck and it's kind of like lunchtime, walk away, come back. You might find a solution after. We'll see. I'll catch you all around. That was a bit of fun. It's good times.